Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan, as always, joined by Callum and James in the studio. How you going, guys?
Good. We're on a bit of a roll, aren't we? This is another week in the studio.
Oh,
yeah,
is that 3 weeks in a row?
3 weeks in a row. Jeez.
Oh, jeez. I think we're
going
to have
a serious illness. That's it.
We're gonna have to take. We're gonna have to take a week off just to so we don't set a precedent and the listeners don't get used to us coming back every week. Yes. Well, we're back again. And we're talking about two films again this week.
Two weirdo movies.
Both slightly disappointing for different reasons, but that's okay.
Oh, really? You thought this?
I think we'll talk about it later.
Okay,
yeah. Look, we'll get the worst one out of the way first, shall we?
Well, yeah. What we're gonna do, like last week, we did first half Stranger Things, second half Black Phone, and we there was some poor logistics planning, and we kind of had to rush. So we're going to do the same thing this week, but we're going to take our time and hopefully,
we will not be harried.
Yes, no. Exactly. So, and I'm going to speak very slowly and I'm going to try and not talk over you guys like I always do. So the movies we're going to be looking at today are Men and Crimes of the Future. But we're going to take our time, and what we get done, we get done. It's going to be a nice organic conversation, so we can always fit in what we don't get done another time if we don't start a film. I think we can get through it all.
We can always keep, as always, podcast listeners, doesn't affect you, but we can always continue the conversation off here.
Yeah,
and you'll get the full conversation.
Yeah.
In the uploaded podcast for our radio listeners.
Yes. I don't think there are any live listeners anyway. It's mostly a podcast anyway.
Live in hope.
This doesn't really matter. But yeah, we're going to split it into first movie we're going to review is Men, written and directed by Alex Garland, who wrote and directed Ex Machina, which is a really good sci-fi movie. And he also did Annihilation, which I have problems with, but it's also an interesting sci-fi movie
liked Annihilation.
based on the book.
I remember we talked about it and we said, I think maybe we did a review on it.
On the old show, I think.
Yeah. Annihilation's one of those movies where it's a completely feminist work. Just by circumstance, they didn't go out to make this film with lots of strong female protagonists.
It's because it's well written. It's not. Yeah. It's not direct. It's not just they're women and therefore it's good. And know.
And that's what it's such a fantastic film. So he has the chops to make a great film. Is what I mean.
Oh he's also a great screenwriter. He I'm pretty sure he wrote the script for he wrote the screenplay for 28 Days Later.
Oh wow.
And he also did Dredd, the Judge Dredd movie with Carl Urban, and he's written a few other movies as well.
Right, he just dropped the ball on this.
That's the thing.
He knows how to pen a tail. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will just say, since you brought up the old show, if we were still doing the old show, you know what this review would be called? Man versus Movies versus Men.
Yuck! That's disgusting.
It's amazing.
No, on the old
Man vs Men,
on the old show I used to just put the movie title so people knew what we were reviewing. Now we do the funny.
Well, we try this.
I'm gonna after we review Men, I'm gonna suggest a title for the episode. Anyway, Men is written and directed by Alex Garland. Alex Garland, obviously very talented, and when they announced this movie, I was just Alex Garland, I'm in. I don't care.
Horror film Alex Garland, sign me up right away.
I don't care what it is, I'm down. Then they announced what it was called, who was in it. I'm like, wow, awesome, cool. Yeah. Trailer comes out, creepy, cool. Can't wait to see it. And then we all saw it, and it ended, and
it was a movie.
Disappointed, to say the least. I mean, I don't know where to begin. I mean, I guess we should say it's about Jessie Buckley plays a woman whose abusive husband commits suicide, and she kind of goes on to like a country
getaway.
Like a country. She goes to a little house in the countryside in England to sort of process her emotions.
Yeah, get like a fresh start.
Yeah,
kind of
to
thing.
sort of grieve, if that's the right word, in her own way.
Process it. Yeah. I mean, in any kind of situation like that, it's like you don't want to be in that environment. You have to just get away.
Yeah, and so she goes to this like idyllic, her dream
a little country village.
Yeah, and this little village, and while she's there dealing with her trauma, all the men in the village, all played by the same actor, Rory Kinnear,
genius,
start passive aggressively.
It's a movie about toxic masculinity, right? So all the male characters are very either not antagonistic, but they're chauvinistic. They're
exactly
a bit creepy.
misogynistic. It's
how did you drive your husband to this?
Yeah, exactly. And so there's this thing of the movie. It's a very slow burn movie, which isn't a bad thing usually, or sometimes when it's done well. And it's just like, and there's obviously something going on because
there's an undercurrent of tension throughout the whole film.
And the audience obviously can see that Rory Kinnear is playing all these different unrelated men. But the characters in the movie obviously don't mention it. And so
that's one thing that did strike me as a bit weird. I'm like, you'd think the lady be like, all these dudes look the same.
No, it works. That's the whole point of the movie. That's the metaphor of the movie, which is why the ending was so disappointing, because I was just like, maybe they should have mentioned it and maybe had a bit of a wink, because what we get at the end was...
I mean, if there wasn't, we'll say, the Green Man mythological element to the movie, then I would say, it's like...
I suppose...
Obviously,
that's another part of the movie that's completely
So we should explain what actually happens in the film. So spoiler... Because we're going to need to deconstruct this a fair bit.
Yeah, I don't think there's any point in doing a non-spoiler because...
So quick non-spoiler review for men... Confused screenplay. Don't watch it unless you're bored. You've got nothing else to watch.
If you're a real like Alex Garland nerd, or if you're a real like art house horror weirdo,
don't watch it if you like the Green
nerd.
Don't watch it if you like the Green Man.
Yeah, I know. You're probably better off watching the Green Knight instead.
Yeah, the Green Knight's a much better movie than this.
It does have nice locations.
Yeah, it looked nice.
Yeah. Anyway,
and spoiler-free review. Jessie Buckley is always amazing in everything she's in. And Rory Kinnear is a really dope actor.
Yeah.
Everything, and it looked pretty nice. Everything else
is garbage.
Disappointing.
Garbage. Spoilers for men.
Okay.
I would quickly, I would agree with your point that it's like the whole point of the movie is that men are all the same, like toxic masculinity. It looks the same kind of thing. But then they add the Green Man element into it, and it becomes something a little different.
That feels.
I'm like the kind of horror element to it. I'm like, I feel like it doesn't work on such just a metaphor level. It's like, because technically everyone's the Green Man. I'm like, it's more of a horror thing, and she should have been like, you all look the same.
That's why the movie doesn't work, because it's trying to do two or more different things.
So long story short, for listeners who are interested but don't want to watch it, it's about a woman whose husband kills himself and she decides to get away from it all. She gets terrorized by some men in the village.
Yeah.
There's some unspoken religious motif about the paganistic creature called the Green Man, which is a white man who's sticking leaves in his body
in the movie.
And then there's also like an altar about it and like motifs you can see.
It's an English pagan
European
folklore figure who, like a man tied to
nature, like the male version of the Spriggan kind of creature.
Yeah, like a male fertility idol or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
and so once the man has got enough leaves in his body or whatever, he decides to go on a rampage. In
this movie, there's some weird subplot about one of the men is like putting leaves in his skin and
to transform into the Green Man.
And which by the end of the movie, Callum and I were like, that's a more interesting movie about a man who thinks he's the Green Man rather than whatever Alex Garland was trying to say. With this.
So anyway, she manages to defeat the Green Man. And we should say that when she injures one man, all of the men in the town get equally injured.
Yeah, it's all at the end. It's all revealed that it's the one person.
So it's the men of the town are a malevolent supernatural entity, which is the Green Man. But I don't think the Green Man's actually spoken out loud. Like the words, it's just men. And then her friend comes to pick her up, and she's pregnant, which is emphasized for some reason. Alex Garland decided not to tell us.
That's the thing. Is like the movie's trying to do a lot of things. Alex Garland said that he was like he really obsessed with the Green Man, and he wanted to make a movie about the Green Man. And then he's like, and then I also had the idea about this kind of, the village of men terrorizing the woman, whatever. And the whole, misogynistic...
make them two separate movies, Alex, please.
And he's tried to smash them together, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah, we've talked... it's funny, that's what I was saying to Nathan on the way here as a station, about how, we've talked about how common it is for script doctoring and multiple scripts to just be smooshed together in Hollywood. Not so much with Alex Garland.
No, yeah, that wasn't the case here.
No, but I'm like... It might as well have been though, you know what I mean? It's like two scripts that he kind of just like smooshed together to make a script baby.
Which, could have worked, but the execution was pretty rough. I mean, like the first half of it's about an hour and 40 minutes, which isn't that long.
No.
The first half is mostly Jessie Buckley slowly walking around like the English countryside, and occasionally there's some like kind of horror music, and she might be being followed, and it's a bit creepy. And, because we thought it was leading up to something, we're like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, that you feel like the tension was going to pay off.
Yeah, and probably the tunnel scene, I think, is really well... Yeah, it's really well executed, especially with the musical element of her voice echoing through the tunnel. And then you see the guy all the way at the end of the tunnel, like in silhouette. It's super creepy. Like, that's when we're like, okay, this is... Yeah. There's not a lot going on. Yeah. There's not a lot going on. But yeah, like Chainsaw Massacre, it's like, it's going to go from zero... Frenzy, it's going to go from 0 to 60 really quick. And, she goes around, she meets the different men. There's, the priest.
Yeah.
The police officer.
The landlord,
the boy.
Yeah, the schoolboy.
The men at the pub.
The drunkards.
Yeah, the chavs at the pub. Who don't really have a role except for that one bit where they run at a front door and then they're not there anymore. And like, that's it. And I guess the whole point of the movie was that Alex Garland, like that, the man character, Rory Kinnear's character. And Rory Kinnear has all these like different prosthetics and wigs.
Yeah.
Each different man he plays, and he's really good in all the roles. And boy, and all the he's good in all the roles. But I guess the idea that Alex Garland was trying to present is that each man presents a different
element of toxic masculinity.
And like I guess you could say that if you stretched it far enough. Yeah, but I was just like, all of them treat her pretty much the same in terms of their awfulness.
Yeah. There's not one guy who symbolizes one element.
Yeah.
In my opinion, yeah.
Like, you could say, the priest is more directly sexual.
Lecherous, yeah.
Yeah, and, the cop is more dismissive, and the landlord is more... like passive aggressive in terms of his patronizing. Yeah, exactly. He's not over. He's the nicest quote unquote one, but still he's being a bit of a dick. And like, so I guess you can say that, but it's not
overt.
It's not overt, and it's not particularly.
If you're going to be playing with an idea like that, it needs to be.
I think honestly, as much as I love Rory Kinnear, I think they should have just been played by different actors. Yeah. Or Rory Kinnear should have also played the husband character.
Yeah.
And really tied it all together. And that might be simplifying things too much.
No. But I feel like...
But also clears the message a little bit.
Yeah. But the men needed to... They needed to be more egregious. They needed to be more larger than life if they were going to symbolize one element. Like, if you know what I mean.
Look, like it depends.
It's a horror film.
It's weird because you can say on the one hand, you don't want to get too heavy-handed with like a guy who comes out and says, "Go make me a sandwich, woman." Like, obviously,
then again, maybe you should. If it's a message,
so it's like on one hand you can say, "Oh no, that's a bit too in your face, heavy-handed." But then, like, by the end of this movie, I was just like, "Well, I wouldn't say this movie wasn't heavy-handed in its deflecting of what it's actually trying to say." It's deliberately trying to not be heavy-handed and ends up being heavy-handed.
Yeah.
So why not just be heavy-handed?
So the birthing scene at the end is just like, all right, we get it.
So the men are the horror element of the film. So if they're going to be the monsters, they need to be monstrous. You can't just
That's the thing. It's kind of
like, horror. It's supposedly a horror film.
that's the thing is, like, at the end of the movie, I was just like, I guess it's a psychological thriller. Sure, maybe they didn't want to be a full-blown horror movie, whatever. But a horror movie probably would have just been more interesting.
If they were more aggressive, like Callum says, you could also tie in the theme of post-traumatic stress, right? You could have been like, everything's aggressive to her. Like, oh, she's seeing, or it's like the damage that he caused her is now she's not trusting of. Like, it doesn't have to be literal, right? It could be from her perspective.
Yeah.
Well, Garland definitely tries to play with metaphor in this film.
Yeah. So
that's even if it doesn't land.
If she was seeing the aggression everywhere, it might not have had to have been real, right? It could have just been like, she's obviously suffering from...
it's clearly a metaphor because Rory Kinnear is playing all the same... all the different men, and no one mentions it. So it's a metaphor for the audience, not... The characters in the movie don't realize it. So... They obviously, Garland is obviously trying to say something.
It's not very well.
Exactly. It's just like,
I mean, you could have all the men. You could keep the story exactly the same.
Yeah.
But you could have each of the men treat her the same on it's like 7 days or whatever. And one day they're all really rude to her. Then they're really, you know what I mean? Like, you could do it like every day she gets treated differently, and at the reactions that she has about being treated by everyone in the town that one emotional way. At least that way, it's kind of like you can have a structure to the way she's treated by the men.
I don't know. Like,
it's hard because it's hard to get into this conversation without being speculative.
Yeah,
because he doesn't give us enough to work with at a contextual level.
I think also, like, once you realize what the movie's trying to say, which a movie called Men about a woman who's terrorized by men, it's like, well, it's clear. It's pretty clear before you even watch the movie what the movie's going to be about. And so when the movie ends, you're just like, oh, I didn't really get anything extra from that.
Well,
I know men are terrible to women. I know toxic masculinity is a problem. The enjoyment or experience of watching the movie without all the metaphor, without all the thematic, the message of the movie, without all that, just the entertainment aspect of the film wasn't enough to sort of hold my attention or warrant a rewatch. And then you add the thematic elements and the message, the metaphor, and I'm like, well, halfway through the movie, it's just like, well, I get it.
Yeah. So the interesting part of the screenplay, if you will, was the notion of the Green Man, like we said before, the mythological,
which seems shoehorned
fertility, deity-esque creature.
Yeah.
The problem is that it has, like, I guess there's a cult in the town, and that's what the Green Man is like the product of some cult activity.
I don't think so. One, like we said, because it's all played by the same actor, it's the metaphor for the audience. And two, at the end, when you find out that it is all the same entity,
it's like just the one. It's
the one man.
But there is the iconography in the church. That's what I mean. Like there's an icon. Presence.
If you wanted to use your own headcanon, you could say the presence of the creature, the entity, like has maybe a hold on this town or has been here since
however long,
hundreds of years. But I think that's just...
So the issue is that we have a fictitious enemy for the hero, but it doesn't get named. There's tiny segments of character building where we see a man insert like leaves and sticks into his body.
Yeah.
He never says anything. So you get this really...
Does he say... I think he says something at the end.
Oh, he says, "You hurt me."
Oh, yeah, something
through
like
the priest.
Yeah.
No, the Green Man in his Green Man form, like when he's chasing her, and then there's the not dandelion. What do you call those things?
Like the spores.
Yeah, the spore.
Yeah. But he's essentially a blank slate. What I mean.
Which again, it's the metaphor of the movie. My brain is just. I need to eat something. I can't think of the word. The deliberate mysteriousness of the movie.
Yeah, everything's obfuscated.
Yeah, which is fine. In theory, is there's definitely something there about like fertility, or her friend is pregnant, and there's a theory. It's not really explored in the movie, but there's a theory that her husband impregnated her before he died, and so this is her sort of coming to terms with that.
Her subconscious forcing her to recognize.
And then, of course, there's the creature. The men keep birthing themselves. Like one man gives birth to another.
That's the climax.
And the whole climax.
It was meant to be shock. It was meant to be kind of an in-your-face shocking body horror moment. Yeah. And the first time you're like, cool. Yeah. And then it's like, all right, we get it. It's cheesy. Cycles of violence. Generational toxic.
It's like toxic masculinity gives birth to toxic masculinity. And it's like, and her and her friend will break this cycle because they're strong. And it's just like, yeah, I guess we get it. This movie's boring.
The climax... For context, the climax of the film is she injures the Green Man coincidentally in all of the same places that her husband was injured once he fell out of the window.
I will say that, that is cool that when she splits the guy's hand, it splits open and then he's like using it as a claw. It's creepy.
That was gnarly, It was gnarly when it's through the mailbox slot and he pulls it back and you're like, yuck.
So she's defeating the spectre of her dead husband.
Yeah. Although I will say that the CGI, even though it's quite a good CGI, it's not as good as practical effects, and it has no. It had no effect on me in terms of like gore factor. I was just like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And especially because they keep doing it, and it's just it gets boring, and you become desensitized.
And then so after a brief escalation with the Greenman, he ends up, as we just mentioned, giving birth, and each time is a little more gross than the next until eventually there's a back birth, I believe.
Yeah, he's given birth out of all sorts of
places.
Orifices.
And eventually the husband is born from the final man.
They could have done this practically, though, right? They could have just shoved a doll somewhere and be like, all right,
get Jim Carrey involved.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it with the next movie we're talking about. Like, they really need to get back on board with the whole practical effects.
The piece de resistance of this really terrible screenplay is the husband and the wife sit down next to each other.
Oh, so they give birth to the husband.
That's what I said. The husband,
creature keeps giving birth.
The final birth is the husband.
The men keep giving birth to the other men, all Rory Kinnears, like, all covered in blood, crawling out, still with the same wound, symbolizing, toxic masculinity, like just gives birth to more toxic masculinity and misogyny. And eventually the last man creature gives birth to her husband.
And then she goes, "What do you want from me?" And he says, "Your love." And cue credits.
Cuts to the title card.
A single tear rolls down our face.
Although we should say she has the axe in her hand that she's going to kill him.
And there is
but it cuts to black, and there's the implication that she does kill him.
Ending the cycle.
Yeah, ending the cycle of misogynistic violence. And I'm just like, we get it. We got this an hour ago. It's like the movie. Like I said, the movie itself, without all the message, is not that great. And so when you import the message, which you get by the first 5 minutes of the movie, you're like, okay,
I understand.
Yeah, that was a waste.
I know it's hard to write a screenplay.
Also,
creating anything is difficult, right? It's a work of art. So I'm sure when Alex Garland started this project, or projects, I don't know if he combined multiple into one, whatever, no one sets out to make a bad film. No one sets out to make a bad screenplay. But I can't help but think to myself, and we talked about this last week as well, like, how could you turn this idea into a better idea? And I'm going to say it's simple in quotation marks because it's not simple. I'm just a schmuck, reviewing movies like, we've talked about on the show, we're no one.
We're no one, yeah.
But it's really simple. Wife goes to husband's, where he grew up, husband's family
that's
town.
what you were saying,
grew up, she goes there for the funeral. Then you can have cult if you want to have the Green Man. You can have that element in there. But then you can also explore inherited violence. Maybe his father was a violent... You know what I mean? Yeah. Then you can explore the ideas Garland wants to explore in a more coherent way. You didn't need to smash two weird screenplays together to create this abomination.
Yeah, like coming to terms with your abuse and how you were treated after the fact. Like that's a thing.
You can also play off of the father's mother as well, so there can be this recognition.
The husband's
the husband's mother. Yeah. So you can have the recognition of violence, generationally speaking. Yeah. Not just the personal.
Where
violence.
Does misogyny come from? Yeah. And then if you wanted, like you came up with this idea as well. If you wanted to add the Green Man element, it could be like a Wicker Man thing where she goes back to the husband's hometown after he dies, and everyone there is like a weird cultist that worships the Green Man, and it's that's obviously a different movie again.
If it's a cult, the cult's often patriarchal anyway, so you can have that whole patriarchy oppression involved. It's inherent in the idea.
Yeah, and I mean that's again maybe too on the nose or too heavy-handed, but it's just like, oh, he was misogynist because his community was misogynist and so on and so forth, but also with creepy, pagan
If you did want to have the
and
Green Man, that's one of the ways you could go about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame because, like, in theory, I should have loved this movie. Like, everything about it. It ticked all my boxes. I'm like, Alex Garland, Jesse Buckley, Rory Kinnear, horror.
Pagan mythology.
Yeah, supernatural, psychological thriller.
Body horror.
Pagan, body horror. Important social feminist message. I'm all down for that. But yeah, like I said, all the elements together, I shrugged my shoulders. I was like, that wasn't worth it. And at the end, when the husband appears and is like, all I wanted was your love, and then it cuts to black, I was just like,
that's it.
I rolled my eyes so hard, almost passed out. I was just like, who thought that was a good ending? That's a student film ending.
I know, and that's not an insult to student filmmakers. It's just the point where it's like, it felt like a first draft.
We say that so often. How often do we say that?
Like I said, though, it's hard writing a screenplay, right? We're just some guys in a studio. Lord knows we tried. But we're just some guys in a studio. But you have to make all the beats work. It has to work. The story has to work all together. You can't just have a mess.
But like I said, in theory, it does work. It's like a woman is being chased by the specter of her abusive husband. So it's like, it's there. All the elements are there. It's just the execution is just like...
I will say, though, you're also... you're giving more credibility to the screenplay than it necessarily has. Do you know what I mean? Like, the spectre of her husband makes an appearance right at the end.
But that's what I'm saying is... No, I'm not saying the literal spectre.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But you're making it sound so much more coherent.
That's what I'm saying is when you think about what the movie's trying to say, when you think about what Garland is trying to say...
The intended message.
You understand it. You get it. You go, you've got the toxic masculinity breeds, the misogyny breeds, you've got the fertility angle with, like, how does that, the Adam and Eve aspect, with the apple.
I don't understand.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Oh, we get it, Alex.
Yeah.
That stuff, you think about it, you go, okay. But rather than...
I don't understand why they didn't include a rape in the story. If it's about fertility... No, I know it sounds brutal, but if it's about fertility, and that's the whole thing about the film, is they're all trying to impregnate, like, not all of them, but certainly the lecherous priest.
We talked about that, an idea of the film is the Green Man is deliberately trying to impregnate her by using different facades of the different men, that's a different movie. I think.
But I'm like,
it's a more interesting. Fun
look, there was no sexual assault in the movie, but he certainly tried.
Yeah, that's my point. I'm like, it's about the enemy, if you will, the boogie monster, is that fertility idea.
I like,
they even have the pregnant woman at the end.
Yeah, it's like, we're three straight white guys, and we often talk about movies, about women or about race, and about it's like. And it's like, I would like to have different, more diversity just in this discussion. But just from our perspective, I'm just like, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a good movie. That's what I'm trying to
No, the message was good. The message is good. The message is fine.
Yeah.
But the structure of the film is
the actual movie as an enjoyable film.
As a piece of art.
And also, like, in another sort of way, like, when you watch a David Lynch movie and you're like, I have no idea what this movie means. I have no idea what David Lynch is trying to say, if he's trying to say anything at all, but I love it.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird and it's out there and...
David Lynch is a vibe.
But that's what I'm saying is...
This movie doesn't have a vibe.
This movie could have just been a vibe and go, I don't know what it means, but cool.
Yeah.
But it's like, we both know what it means and...
There's no mystery, there's no mysterious element to keep you guessing, to keep you on your...
But even the elements that we're not sure about, like the dandelion, the spore and all that, and like, okay, you can sort of get an idea of where they're coming from, but... even if I straight up say I don't get this movie, I don't get a lot of movies that I still like.
Yeah,
you don't have to understand it for it to be interesting.
Yeah.
No, I think
I was still at the end of it. I was just like, even if I didn't understand anything,
that's the
I was
problem.
like, that's boring.
It's like a subconscious. It's a subconscious thing, isn't it? Like the cues we pick up when it comes to storytelling. Like we can sit here and we can discuss how we didn't enjoy it because it wasn't a coherently structured screenplay, or it wasn't expressed in a coherent way that all of the pieces made sense to us unconsciously. Whereas someone like David Lynch, he can, create whatever mad idea he has going around, but because he made it with intention, each part was meant to be that way for him. And so we kind of get, like Nathan said, that vibe where it's like, that it was made with intention and it was David Lynch's his pure idea expressed onto the screen, whereas Alex Garland didn't really make that mark. Whereas I don't think that this was the best version of his idea, and that's why we don't really like it. It feels like it's a copy of a copy, if that makes sense. Like he's rewritten in a screenplay that he saw in his own words.
Or he's got two drafts of two different movies, and he's
but you know what I mean? I'm talking about, like, we often talk behind the scenes about, like, the best versions of ideas. Like James said, and I actually kind of agree with him, that the Harry Potter movies aren't necessarily going to be the final versions of the Harry Potter cinematic attempts. Whereas the Lord of the Rings...
I don't remember.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, you said in 50 years.
So there could be a better version of the Harry Potter films.
I think the first two I would leave, but then everything after that you could do.
And then you juxtaposed it, if you will, by saying that, for example, the Lord of the Rings movies couldn't be done again. It's like
I think I was talking about a different movie, not Harry Potter. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, Men, I don't think is like the best version of this film that Alex Garland could have made.
But those were adaptations. Like this is like. And this is definitely but you could say that about any movie where it's like if it's
not
an original movie.
But what I mean is, like, for example, David Lynch's attempts, like, they're definitely his distilled version.
Yeah.
Whereas Alex Garland kind of just...
But this is Alex Garland's vision. He wrote and directed the movie.
It is his distilled version, whether we like it or not.
But what we got wasn't particularly...
That's what I mean. I'm like, was it... Like, he can say that, but like I said, I feel like it's definitely...
What Callum means is... He wants Alex to try again.
No, well, kinda. I mean, like, that sounds mean, but what I mean is, do we know that that was his best attempt? I don't think that it was.
I've thought about this.
We've seen him do much better screenplays.
Yeah.
Much better.
Yeah, I've thought about this before, and I'm sure someone else has talked about it before as well. But like, because there are directors who have remade their own movies before. But I always thought it would be an interesting thought experiment of, like, what if you got one filmmaker who made the same film like every 10 years and he just kept remaking it. Like, in theory, it sounds interesting. In practice, probably wouldn't work. Probably be the same a lot of the time. He would probably get bored and start changing things for the sake of it. But it's something I've thought about. It's like, if Alex Garland could remake this movie,
of this
would
personal
he?
Style.
And Alex Garland's probably happy with this movie, and a lot of critics seem to be happy with this movie, so he probably wouldn't change it. But us as an audience who didn't really enjoy it, it's easy for us to say they could have done this, they could have done that instead. We do it all the time.
Yeah. Oh no, like I said, he's a brilliant filmmaker.
Yeah.
I just don't think he thought it through. I know he obviously did.
Like, he did,
to get to shoot and then to actually make the film. Like I said, I feel like it's easy for me to talk shit, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But like I said, the screenplay speaks for itself. I think that the problems in the screenplay are inherent, and he can do better, that's all.
Yeah.
We'll be back right after this short break. You are back on the Tuesday review. Callum, continue.
Yeah. I feel bad talking smack about writers and directors because everybody tries their best. It's like we never say these types of things from a personal place.
No,
it's just from a place of frustration when you see a work of art that could be so much better. Like I said, especially from people we know can do great work.
That's the thing. Is it's like I really wanted to like the movie, and just because we don't. Doesn't mean Alex Garland's not happy with it. Doesn't mean there are not a lot of other people who don't really like it. But yeah, it's just like I expected more from the movie, and then when it ended, I was just
like, that's it.
Yeah, I was just like, really? Like, come on.
Yeah.
They can do better, and they should be doing better. And Yeah, I think even, like we said, we always talk about movies where we're like, they could have gone one way, they could have gone another way, they could have gone any way, and it would have been better.
Yeah.
And like this movie probably could have worked as just a straight horror slasher movie where she's being chased around the town and still have a feminist message. A lot of horror movies unintentionally ended up, because of the final girl trope, ended up being like a feminist kind of...
I mean, you look at Alien.
Yeah. I mean, that character was originally supposed to be a man, which is like... And then they just cast a woman, and then
one of the all-time greatest horror heroes.
But I just mean that's why, like, you know, there's a lot of female horror fans and there's a lot of female horror directors now, especially now in the last few years. And it's like the genre just inherently over time, maybe maybe started off with a lot of, you know, gratuitous nudity and stuff like that, but it's like over time is like has been embraced as a sort of feminist, you know, genre,
especially with the democratization of filmmaking tools.
Yeah, and it's just like, so if you just made a straight horror movie about creepy men attacking a woman, you know, you've automatically got a starting point in terms of what you're trying to say about society. So that's what I've kind of been saying about how, like, the movie itself, you got all the metaphor, you got all the stuff, maybe I just didn't get it, quote unquote.
Well,
but
neither did I.
Yeah, but, and you know, the movie is deliberately trying to be mysterious about certain things, but even without that, just the movie itself is just kind of meh.
It gets so...
And that's what I was going to say at the start. This episode can just be titled Meh. Instead of Men.
Meh.
Meh.
Meh. It bogs itself down.
Just raise the N, the meh.
Instead of M-E-N-M-E-H.
It bogs itself down in so much imagery and so much context that it doesn't even need. Which I guess is my core problem with the film, is it tries too hard, it does too much when it doesn't need to. Like you said, it's a simple concept.
And with the Green Man stuff, it's just like that's a different movie. You either do that movie or you do the men. And if you are going to do the men, maybe have more men. I mean, I'm not saying that from a...
More men, some boys in the process of learning the messages of the men.
Yeah.
So you can physically demonstrate the cycles being repeated.
It's kind of like with the Black Phone we were talking about last week, how it was just like, if you just took out the supernatural element, you still have an interesting kind of horror movie. Same with this. If you just took out the supernatural horror elements, you got an interesting drama about a woman who's trying to reconcile with what happened to her.
The only way she can get away is by getting one of the boys to help her.
I think she
has to help the boys break free from the cycle of toxic masculinity in doing so.
Yeah. But I think that's I mean, I think that's why the movie feels disappointing, is because if it was a good movie, we wouldn't be thinking, oh, I wish this wasn't a horror movie.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wish this didn't have supernatural elements. If it was a good, balanced movie, you would say, oh, this is perfect the way it is.
Yeah.
You know, but instead I'm like, I would rather just see a Jessie Buckley walk around the English countryside, be sad for the whole movie, and not all that bullshit at the end with the multiple CGI births that get really repetitive and really boring.
It could have been a great drama.
Yeah. There's a movie... I mean, this has a sci-fi element, but there's a movie with Eva Green where her husband dies and she like has a procedure to like give birth to his clone, and it's so she like gives birth to her dead husband and then raises him back up to adulthood, and by that point she's already old, and it's like this weird grieving love story. It's called Womb. It's a pretty interesting movie. But yeah, it's like you could take a concept of like the Green Man and just be like, and just do it for something very small and very simple.
Yeah.
A24 has a lot of movies like that.
There's an interesting film before we move on called A Dark Song, which is kind of similar in that it's set in the English countryside, but it's just two actors. It's just a man and a woman trying to perform a magical ritual in a mansion, famously attempted, I should say, by the English magician Aleister Crowley. But it's this really intimate drama about a woman who wants to get revenge on the Satanists who killed her son, and she employs this middle-aged, I guess, wizard to help her perform the ritual. But it's an exploration of two characters and the damage that they have. And I'm like, it's not the same themes as this film, but I kind of get some of the vibes of this mythology.
Yeah.
It's the countryside, it's green, it's about grief and trauma. So there are some good films which have some of the same vibes, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So there's, a Dark Song.
Yeah, Worm, yeah. Worm. No, you could, like we always say, you could do a simple version, you could do a more straight-up horror, you could do something more goofy, you could do something more serious. Doesn't matter, but anything's more interesting than the movie we got, which literally made me roll my eyes. And I'm someone who loved Mother, which kind of beats you over the head.
That was a funny review, because me and you were like, nice, and Nathan's like, yeah.
Yeah, but remember that when that came out, and people were like, this is the worst movie ever made, and it got like 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and this was like
crazy, yeah.
And we were like, I was just like, this movie's amazing, and I'm like, it's clearly just an allegory for the environment and Mother Earth, and like this means this and that means that. I'm like, it's not supposed to be taken so literally, and I'm like, that movie to me, like, remove the allegorical message. It's still fun to watch. It gave me anxiety. I was like, this is crazy. She's running around. There's like people in her house. This movie, I thought, because I heard Man ends crazily.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to turn into that. We mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, we thought it was shit was going to hit the fan, and like it was going to be great. And what ended up happening was she gets chased around a little bit, and then a guy keeps giving
and it's a relatively tame body horror,
Yeah, especially because it's the CGI. It's just completely just not effective at all.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know if we did a good job of talking about the movie. But
I think we explored it.
Yeah, but it's especially because like we were all looking forward to it, and
we were all keen.
Yeah, I think like I'll be interested to see what Alex Garland does next, just because I think he's still got. I know he's still got something up his sleeve, but
that's Men.
Yeah.
Male director, what can I say?
Yeah, see, this is the problem. If it was a director... Men are terrible.
So,
like, I'm not
leave it to a man to cock up a feminist message.
That's it. Leave it to a man to tell us about how women feel about toxic masculinity.
He's mansplaining his own message about mansplain. He's like, don't mansplain. Don't mansplain, not mansplain.
We got Mensplained.
Yeah,
we got Mensplained.
This has been
that's another potential title.
This has been Mensplained.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next movie we're going to talk about tonight is the new Cronenberg body horror, I suppose. Even it's not really
his
horror.
Return to body horror.
Science fiction-y body horror drama.
Crimes of the Future. His second movie called Crimes of the Future.
Yeah.
Yeah, his original one came out in like 1970 and was like his second movie or something.
Yeah.
And
plot's completely different though.
Yeah, it's not
was
really
it a short film?
It's like an hour long. It's technically a feature, but it's only like an hour long. I watched it and the original 70 version, and it's obviously clearly like a student film. Like it was shot on like a college campus, and just people walking around with a voiceover and stuff, and there's a weird supposed to be in a weird futuristic world, and the narrator explains what's happened. It's kind of experimental in a way. It's obviously very early in his career, and so it's like a zero budget.
Yeah.
So, but this movie is not really related to that, except for a couple of elements of his signature body horror and stuff like that. But yeah, this is David Cronenberg's first feature film in 8 years. His last one came out in 2014, Maps to the Stars.
We speculated that seeing his son do the Lord's work maybe made him feel something.
Yeah.
he got a bit jealous.
I'll show you, Sonny
jealous
Jim.
And competitive.
Yeah.
So you do body horror, that's my thing.
I'll show you how it's done.
Apparently he wrote the script for this version of Crimes of the Future like 20 years ago, and he's just been trying to get it made
Yeah.
since then. And Yeah, so like I think this is just something that's been in the works, but because of his type of filmmaking, that's not exactly commercially viable.
One thing
he's just always trying to get it done.
How ridiculous is it that David Cronenberg doesn't get his movies immediately financed?
We talked about this like
it's a Scorsese.
We've been talking about it for years.
When
the Irishman came out, we're like,
if I was a wealthy
even
man,
Spielberg. When I found out, this was maybe 10. I was in uni, like I was going to film school. I found out like Spielberg has trouble getting films made, and I just lost all faith in filmmaking and humanity. I was like,
how can you make it if Spielberg has to pay for money?
Yeah, it's and I know there's a whole business aspect, and you go, okay, they need something.
They say, come on, Marty, do one Marvel movie, and then we'll give you a little bit of cash.
I would love to see a Martin Scorsese. I want to see Martin Scorsese do a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
Like I would think he would do something interesting with it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Anyway,
space gangsters.
Gangsters in space. That's it.
Anyway, yes, back to
De Niro.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cronenberg had trouble getting this movie financed, and that's nuts.
But it makes sense because his movies are
he's always been low budget and stuff.
Yeah, his movies have always
control.
been not commercially
viable. Yeah.
Even though back in the day he could still get his stuff released at cinemas because that's how the industry works. And now the industry's changed so much that it's just like, it's a much different thing. Even someone like him can't, they're not going to risk.
When this movie got announced to be actually being filmed and released, we were all very excited because we love the man. And also, what a great title, right? Crimes of the Future.
Yeah.
Like your mind immediately races.
Yeah. It's such a simple title, but it works so well. And like, like with a lot of filmmakers, it's like Cronenberg, I'm there day one. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
And so obviously we were gonna see it. But yeah, I guess we
didn't get a theatrical release in Australia.
Yeah, like I thought it might come to the Nova eventually. Maybe in a couple of months, but I don't know.
As we have the Tuesday review, we managed to secure a limited press screener, of course.
Press screener.
We watched it on our projector.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty great experience.
Yeah, I really liked it. So it's about a performance artist, I guess you'd say, played by Viggo Mortensen.
What do they say in the movie? It's surgery is the new sex.
Yeah.
It's what's big, it's what sells, it's what's controversial.
Yeah, but in the movie, it's like he's basically an artist, but his art is the fact that his body is growing internal organs.
Anomalous
organs that, no one's ever seen before.
Yeah.
And so his form of performance art is having his partner, played by Léa Seydoux, perform live surgery on him in front of a audience in public, and remove the organs, and it's like a whole song and dance they do about it. And in this version of the future, people have become so desensitized to pain.
Yeah, and they also can't get...
Well, they're born without the ability to feel pain.
People can't feel pain.
And they also can't get sick from bacteria infecting the wounds.
And so, literally, literally, instead of sex or instead of, other forms of entertainment, people just, do surgery on each other and cut each other.
Yeah.
For entertainment.
Funny. I was thinking about that while watching the film. Would that actually happen? And I think, probably would. If nobody could feel pain and nobody could get sick from surgery, I was like, there probably would be some degenerates doing it to each other everywhere.
People don't do that literally now, but you have people that have the implants under their skin, or they they do all kinds of
body modification.
Body modification.
Two things. One, what a great Cronenbergian conceit.
Yeah.
Two, there's no way there's not some secret, in real life, there's not some secret rich people who are just cutting each other up for fun.
100%.
There's got to be at least a few rich people who just... There's that scene in the movie where they got that beautiful woman who's being cut on her face.
Yeah.
I'm I was just watching that scene and I'm like, there's got to be someone doing that somewhere in this crazy world. But anyway, And then I guess there's a subplot of a man who's developed organs that can digest plastic, because the world has become so polluted.
Yeah.
That everything is infested with microplastics and whatever, and he's just like him and his underground
but crew. For whatever reason, they're considered dangerous.
Well, that's the thing. That's the whole point. The whole point of the movie is that the government is just like cracking down on people with these new organs, because if it's the next step in evolution, they want to know about it and they want to control it.
Yeah.
Which, you know...
What a great message. Honestly, what a fantastic message. A pertinent message that Cronenberg could deliver.
Yeah, and like I said, he wrote this, 20 years ago. So he didn't have this in mind. But, like, obviously the idea of bodily autonomy and what's happening now with Roe v. Wade and stuff like that, it's so more relevant now than it ever has been. And that's all great science fiction. It's always more relevant now than it was, and it's a reflection of what's happening now. And it's just kind of sad. As much as I love sci-fi, most of sci-fi is just really sad.
Keep my sci-fi outrageous, please.
Yeah. Like, just do Star Wars, please. But even Star Wars, you're like, there's an oppressive government. And there's the freedom fighters. It's just like... But yeah, it's just so sad that we have to keep seeing these movies about how awful we're being treated now.
Yeah, I mean,
just in a sci-fi dystopian. We were talking about this off air. We were like, we live in a dystopia.
We do, yeah.
But the only difference is it doesn't look cool. It doesn't look like Blade Runner.
What do they call it? The boring.
It's a boring dystopia. Yeah. So it's like we live in the horrible sci-fi twisted version. In real life, it just doesn't have neon lights everywhere and people with sunglasses at night.
It sounds so conceitful to say that, right? But when we were talking about, like James said off air, and you look at those virtual reality works fine. We've got the internet. We can talk to people at the speed of light. Our phones are on our wrists. It's like we live in a science fiction world. Yeah. It just doesn't seem like it because we're so used to
because it happens
the world
slowly
coming at us all the time, every day. It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention though was the environmental message. The message that if it's us or the planet, and the planet's going to win, if that makes sense. So
we have to adapt.
Yeah, our bodies are going to like. It's actually a serious problem that people like. Climate change is a problem as well, but at a more local scale, I guess. Pollution and plastics. Like, we consume so much microplastics every year from things like water bottles.
Terrifying, yeah.
Honestly, we don't want to know how much plastic's in our body right now because it would probably scare us.
There was a recent study that I saw, it's been in the news last week or so, that babies are being born with microplastics in their stomachs.
Yeah. How terrifying.
Well, like, I heard that it just, like, it has there's a film over your brain that's just, like, microplastics. Which explains why I can never remember words on the show.
Yet he remembers the names of all the chocolate bars. But yeah, my point is that it's such a pertinent time for this film to be released because this is a message that needs to be disseminated. Like you said about bodily autonomy. Yeah. It's just one great big coincidence that the film actually managed to get released in this period.
I don't think it's a coincidence.
Well, no, you know what I mean. Like he could have got it made 10 years ago, but it's getting made now.
But I think the message is... The sad thing is the message has always been pertinent.
Really,
it's just the fact that it came out now is...
We're getting to a fever pitch about it all.
Exactly. I think
which just goes to show Cronenberg's a genius.
Yeah, I mean, he's
always been
relevant. And he's like 79 years old now and...
Still making world-class science fiction
and I hope he doesn't stop because, like, this movie's awesome.
Well, he's got the next one's rolling, isn't it?
I think he's already starting this next project, which, can't wait.
But we should probably start talking about the film.
Well, so, like, obviously... Yeah, we set that up, and there's a plastic eaters, whatever.
Bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
But then the actual... So it's funny because the film was made in Greece, I believe.
Shot in Athens.
Yeah. With a very limited budget.
It's paid for by Greece.
But as... Yeah, Cronenberg...
in a good way.
Cronenberg's no stranger to having to work with a limited budget. And this movie does feel like some of his earlier, lower budget movies. But it's very well...
That, though.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of works the simplicity works.
It was like watching a classic Cronenberg film. And you don't get that every day.
Yeah. And the fact that it was shot in Athens just because the Greek government was going to give him money or whatever It adds a sort of layer of like a weird dystopian future where I assume there's been a climate crisis.
Yeah, props to Cronenberg. You would never know that it was just shot there by happenstance.
Yeah,
like, everything
originally it was just supposed to be set in Toronto, like modern day Toronto, like most of his movies.
That's a very different film already, yeah.
And just by the fact that they had to shoot in Athens, it gives it a whole new flavor and feeling.
But like it doesn't feel like, oh, this was obviously just shot wherever they could find. It was like
it looks like
the movie perfectly suited its location.
Yeah, and I think it works for the movie as well because there's all these old buildings and these like small laneways that Greece is known for, but then there's also like an old shipyard with all these rusted ships, and it feels like there's been some sort of climate crisis. But the movie isn't really intentionally trying to do that.
It just adds background flavor.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, listeners of the show know that generally speaking, we don't really like CGI, which is a great thing about Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Neither does he really.
Yeah, I think that's, we've talked about before how if you are going to use CGI, that's fine, but you only use it when you really need to. And this movie, on its limited budget, only uses CGI when it needs to.
Yeah.
There's most of the surgery scenes are all practical. There's the really cool, biomechanical devices in the movie that, Cronenberg's signature style.
Look awesome.
Yeah, there's like that coffin. The sark.
So Viggo Mortensen doesn't sleep on a bed. He sleeps on this device.
Oh, that pod.
Yeah, it's like
I wrote it down.
It's like a flesh.
The orchid bed, they call it.
Yeah, it's like a flesh kind of bed, and it looks awesome, and it rotates, and same with that. He has to sit in this like flesh.
The breakfast chair.
Yeah, and
it's like a skeleton chair that like moves your body in such a way so you can digest properly.
It's so cool. It's so weird.
And then there's the surgery pod that they do, and so most of that's all practical.
Looks fantastic on the screen. It's one of those things that will age really well. So it's like when I'm watching this film in 20 years, I'm like, still looks great. Yeah. It's like I think I mentioned to you a while ago now. I watched Scanners. Mostly still holds up fantastic.
Yeah, even though obviously that was working on a limited budget. Yeah. It's just like...
So Cronenberg has this knack for making long-lasting film.
It's practical. He's a great filmmaker, and two, practical effects. They're just so much better and more effective. Like we just talked about all the gore in Men, and it was CGI, and it was quote-unquote good CGI.
Yeah.
But it just had no real...
And then you got Cronenberg
tangible
cutting into like
effect.
Pads on someone, like wrapped around.
But then, like I said, when he does need to use CGI, there are a few incisions on the body that are CGI. And
I mean, you can't exactly just go around moving people's guts.
Viggo Mortensen would be up for it.
I know. They just got a cadaver from the local school.
He's hardcore.
His method, it's fine.
Yeah, he doesn't screw around. He takes his craft seriously. Actually, that was one thing. The one he gets that zipper... That was
cool. Yeah.
Oh man, classic Cronenberg.
Look, that's all the time we have for the live portion of the show. The podcast will continue for our live listeners. I don't think there are many.
There's no.
But thanks for listening. We'll catch you again next week. You're back on the Tuesday review. What were we saying?
I can't remember what we were talking about.
The zipper, yeah.
The zipper, yeah, that was cool. Classic
we're talking
Cronenberg.
about how refreshing it is to see a film that finally embraces practicality, even if that was because he had no other choice due to his limited budget.
Yeah, and it's just also like it's just looks better.
It's just so good to have him back, isn't it?
So yeah. But yeah, what's interesting about the movie as well is, in addition to that kind of environmental bodily autonomy message, I think the movie's very meta. Like, it's a very autobiographical film in a way, even though it's a weird out there sci-fi movie. Like, the fact that it's about an aging artist with grey hair, like Cronenberg himself, who has a reputation that precedes him.
Yeah.
And is literally like offering pieces of himself, his insides, to people for entertainment.
I didn't even pick that up.
To the audience, and then there's also the fact that he's resisting change in terms of these organs that keep growing, and he keeps cutting them out. And then there's the plastic eaters guys who are like, no, this is just the next stage in human evolution. You have to embrace this change. And he's resisting that.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's the whole like
streaming services thing.
Suffering for your art, one, but also like resisting changes in the art form and how people consume art.
Because if you think about it this way, if you decide you want to consume plastic, that's the only thing you can eat. So it's like if you do want to continue eating and you take the easiest option, which is the plastic, you're only eating the plastic. You're not being able to experience the wide. I'm pretty sure plastic eaters can't eat organic food, can they?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So it's like choosing between.
Is like the whole movie is Viggo Mortensen's character is trying to hold on to that
humanity.
Humanity or old way of thinking, quote unquote. And what I love about the ending, you know, and he's the whole like throughout the movie, he's like suffering while eating breakfast in that chair that he's trying to get in the right position so it doesn't feel so terrible to eat. And you know, the whole movie goes by, and he's like, then you find out he's an informant for the cops who are like trying to catch the plastic eaters because they don't want people to know that human evolution is changing. And then you get to the ending, and then he finally embraces the fact just to eat the plastic.
Embraces the plastic.
Embrace the new organs that'll help me.
The new flesh.
Yeah. And like literally the last shot of the movie is him going like, oh.
Not bad,
yeah, not bad. And people online are like really disappointed that ends too abruptly. You know, this movie has nothing to say, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, no, it's perfect.
It has plenty to say. Yeah.
Like one, there's the whole sci-fi environmental message like we talked about and the bodily autonomy and so on. Two, there's the meta aspect, and there's what Cronenberg literally putting himself on the screen. And, you know.
Not to mention some great performances as well, you know.
Kristen Stewart is hilarious in this movie.
Yeah.
And like she plays like a creepy guy.
You know, I remember
in any other movie it would be like a skinny creepy guy, but she's playing it and it's hilarious and awesome.
She has such great range, you know. I remember when Twilight came out, everyone was like, she's so boring.
It's the Robert Pattinson thing, is I was like
she has incredible range.
Yeah, she's great.
Arpat also proved himself.
That's what I'm saying. That Twilight came out and everyone was like, these people suck, they're the worst actors. And then both of those actors branched out and did had such interesting careers, and I hope have continued interesting careers. But
I will say I do like the fact that, especially the plastic subplot, because it's so, as you say, so relevant today. What we're saying with plastics everywhere. I'm like, that really is a realistic, we'll say, evolutionary thing, right? If there's so much plastic in our bodies already, in 1,000 years, will our bodies adapt to just process the plastic? Who knows?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that the way that evolution kind of works?
Naturally. And
over time.
If nature doesn't do it, then we'll probably have to do it ourselves, which is another part of the movie where the plastic eater's leader, is like experimenting on people to help them.
Yeah, exactly.
Digest or whatever.
The messages are so relevant.
Yeah.
And they're...
But it's kind of weird how...
And it's a little better delivered than the last
That's what I was going to say. It's kind of weird how we watch Men and we're like, yeah, we get it, eye roll. And then we watch this and we're like, yeah, we get it, awesome. It's kind of weird how it's... I mean, taste is subjective.
Yeah.
Yes, everything we say is bullshit and you can take it however you want. But it is interesting how it's just like...
Well, it's how the message is conveyed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's how the message is delivered, how the story is told.
You know, we talked about Men. I was like, remove the message, remove the metaphor, remove the mystery, and you've still got a pretty boring movie. Take Crimes of the Future, remove the metaphor, remove the theme.
Subtext.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a really cool weirdo movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's visually interesting to look at. There's weird things going on.
Fun to watch. The performances are weird. Everyone's saying a weird thing.
Even just the mise en scene, if you will.
Yeah.
The
location.
It's thought-provoking in and of itself.
Well, also the themes are obvious, but you're not battered over the head.
You have to think about it.
And unlike a lot of movies with similar themes, Cronenberg is just like... This movie is kind of... contemplative in a way.
It is.
Not only contemplative about the future.
Silence.
It's like
it's philosophical.
Not only in his thinking about what's going to happen in the future, but like just him thinking about like what does art mean. You know, there's the bit where Viggo Mortensen's character is watching the guy do the dance with all the ears.
Yeah,
He's got his mouth and his eyes are sewn shut.
Yeah.
We should announce spoilers, but I think at this point,
yeah.
There's like a guy doing an interpretive dance with like ears surgically
attached
to different parts of his body.
And it doesn't.
And what's hilarious, and Viggo Mortensen's character is like, it's like commercial trash, whatever.
Because like,
the ears don't even work.
That's what I was gonna say. That's the funniest part. He's like, they don't even work, as if there's like some guy out there with ears that do work.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people would see the trailer and go, oh, this is pretentious garbage. And it's like, no, I think Cronenberg knows this.
Yeah, it's his thing.
Yeah, and it's just like, he's like making, whether deliberately making fun at like superhero movies or whatever, whether that was the intention or not, there is an element of him going like, Viggo Mortensen's character being like, I'm a true artist. I give myself, my insides to people.
Yeah, it's not flashy.
Yeah, and these people, they're just, I think the movie's funny. Like, it's not ha-ha funny.
It can be. It's humorous.
But there's definitely
humor there.
There's a dark sense of humor. Like
funny.
Kristen Stewart's performance, like I said.
Like the thing with the ears, that comment about the thing with the ears, it is funny.
Yeah. Also, like, the fact that, so behind the scenes, Viggo Mortensen like injured his back or something, and so he couldn't stand for long periods of time. Which is why his character he's always crouching in the corner.
Yeah,
and it's kind of hilarious, and like it's just like the camera will pan down and he'll just be like crouching in the corner, like all wearing black, and just be like. And he's got like a gravelly voice because, he's in pain all the time. And it works for his character as well because his character's in pain all the time. Yeah. Like Viggo Mortensen was in real life because he had the operation.
Method acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
He did it on purpose.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it also adds another humorous layer. Yeah. Like, it feels like because...
it makes him look more eccentric.
Yeah. And Cronenberg, has said that he doesn't like superhero movies. He has no interest in superhero movies. But I'm like, it's funny watching a movie like this and like Viggo Mortensen's all dressed in black like a ninja, like crouching in the corner. It's like a Batman movie or something.
It's even about a legendary figure himself,
So it's like this is if you wanted a Cronenberg superhero movie, this is as close as you're getting.
Yeah, and he had some unique abilities and everything.
Scanners was a pretty superhero movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a bit of a hypocrite, I don't know.
Well, like I said, I'd like to see Scorsese make a sci-fi movie. I'd like to see Cronenberg do a superhero movie. I mean, anyone do outside their comfort zone.
Yeah,
would be when you got a great filmmaker.
Would
be interesting. But yeah, it's funny how people react to movies, and like I said, tastes.
Look,
people have different tastes, but I really like this movie.
I thought it was great. I think it's obviously I wouldn't expect this to get a wide cinematic release. I think it's a shame we couldn't go to see it at a proper cinema because I would have liked to see it on the big screen myself, not just at my big screen at home. That being said, I am glad that they went to digital relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Because I said that was a concession he made, I'm guessing.
Well, another thing about Cronenberg is even though he is, an older director and he's been around for a long time, unlike a lot of filmmakers of his generation, he kind of embraces change, like what this movie's about. Well, he embraces Netflix. He embraces
your movies to be seen.
Streaming. Yeah. He doesn't care if people, like David Lynch famously hates people watching his movies on the phone.
Well, I think I was reading the trivia. I was reading the trivia for this movie, and he tried to get it made with Netflix, and they were like, "Nah, bruh, too weird."
I got that written down. We'll talk about that in a minute. But like Cronenberg, doesn't give a shit if you watch it on your Apple Watch. Like he's just like, just watch the movie.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't care if you watch something on your phone.
I mean, I care if you watch it on your phone.
Oh yeah, I personally hate it, but he's an interesting director where he's, a lot of his movies are about this, Videodrome. It's like
which is getting a 4K release soon.
Things are constant. Oh yeah, pre-ordered. Thank you very much. Things are constantly changing. The future is always changing.
It's in flux.
Yeah, you can't just like cross your arms and go no. You have to update with it, and that's what this movie's about, and that's what most of his movies are about. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed it, and I liked all the creepy weirdness.
It has guys eating.
I liked all the
people
body
eating
horror.
plastic buckets. What more do you want?
Yeah, I liked all the body horror. I liked all the weird biomechanical stuff. It's like all of Cronenberg's strengths in a nice
intimate,
little hour and 40-minute package.
It's weirdly intimate. The surgery.
Well,
scenes.
like I said, it's the sexual aspect, like, and there's also the content. Yeah, and also the bodily autonomy and the consent aspect of it.
Yeah, except the sex object of you is Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah.
Isn't he always a sex object?
Kinda, yeah.
Well, yeah, Aragorn. Yes, please. Yummy. But, there's that aspect, but then there's also the contemplative aspect that we were talking about. Like, it's kind of like a just nice little weirdo movie.
Yeah.
Just how we like him.
Yeah.
Except I'd like to see this movie with a bigger budget. But
I'd like to see all these movies with a bigger budget. But
I'd also I'd love to see extras. Some deleted scenes, some behind the scenes.
I hope it comes out in 4K soon.
Yeah.
I'll like to see a movie like this movie. I like to see again. Like Men, I've seen it once. I got it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
This movie, I'm like,
I want to see it on 4K release. I want to see it in the cinemas.
Yeah.
The different ways of experiencing a film.
Like, is it Cronenberg's best? No. But it's his return to body horror since 20 years or whatever. When did Existence came out in 99?
Also, his best is a high bar too.
Yeah.
I mean, also, it's just impressive the fact that a 79-year-old filmmaker is still putting out this level of...
Yeah, that's another thing, right?
I'm not saying I'm not saying he's not sharp.
No. The fact that a man of his age can still be delivering such thought-provoking science fiction is amazing.
While the movie might not necessarily be as shocking as some of his earlier movies, it does retain that element of like... a young man.
It has vitality.
It doesn't have the energy of Videodrome or Scanners.
But it's also not what it's about.
But it is more contemplative. Yeah. And that might be a result of his age. That might be like, it's time we should maybe slow down a bit and have a look at what we're actually dealing with in the present.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what the movie's about.
Yeah, I'm happy to enter the new contemplative era of Cronenberg. If that's what he's given us.
Yeah, well, look, Shrouds. His next movie, Shrouds,
his son can provide the energy,
Yeah.
His next movie, Shrouds, also sounds amazing in a contemplative way as well.
Does it have a synopsis yet?
I do. Where is it? I had it. Give me 1 second. Talk about something else and I'll find it.
Well, I just want to talk about the Howard Shore score, which is incredible. He scored almost all of Cronenberg's movies since the late 70s or early 80s. I can't remember. But and Cronenberg's movies always have amazing scores because Howard Shore is such a great composer. And we talked about Howard Shore when we talked about Lord of the Rings because he did all the music for that.
Oh, really? Well,
and so it's kind of great to see a composer, go from Cronenberg creepy horror synthy weirdo score to big sweeping epic fantasy score. Yeah. And that's talent, baby.
Yeah.
So Shrouds, his next movie stars Vincent Cassel, who is amazing.
Oh. Yeah, he's great. He's in a lot of Cronenberg movies.
It was a new thriller from Cronenberg, centers on Karsh Cassel, an innovative businessman and grieving widow who builds a device to connect with the dead inside of a burial shroud. Karsh's revolutionary business is on the verge of breaking into the international mainstream when several graves within his cemetery are vandalized and nearly destroyed, including that of his wife. While he struggles to uncover a clear motive for the attack, the mystery of who wrought the havoc and why will drive Karsh to re-evaluate his business, marriage, and fidelity to his wife's memory as push him into new beginnings.
Goddamn.
Interesting.
But apparently it's creepy in the way that the shroud lets you talk to the dead and stuff like that, and it's kind of...
this is where I find this really interesting, right? Because David Cronenberg is a staunch atheist, and he has always said, and that's what a lot of his movies are about, and that's what this movie is about, is like the body... They even say it in this movie. The body is reality.
Yeah.
Like, the body is all you get. This is your one chance at life. There is no afterlife. Thank you very much. That's why David Cronenberg doesn't use the term body horror, because he's like, no, it's not horror. It's just like, this is the body. It's like yours. It's beautiful kind of thing. Even though his movies are very
I know it's grotesque.
But that's an interesting thing. If he is going to make a movie about contacting the dead.
Well,
that's an interesting...
I think it is probably due to that contemplative period of his life now.
Yeah.
You're getting old, you have to reckon. It's easy for a young man to say, oh, yeah, no, nothing happens when you die. But when you start to get closer to the end goal...
But that's the thing. Even during the press tour for Crimes of the Future, which is only in the past year, he's been saying the same thing. Like, he doesn't believe in the afterlife, so the body is all you get. So even if he has changed his stance in the last few months...
Yeah.
But it might just be contemplate. Yeah,
it's a fictional tool.
Yeah, it's not so much about.
But that's what I'm saying. Is his way of
contextualizing things for himself. Yeah,
his way of exploring this idea would be very different from another director.
I know what we get is not necessarily what we're reading about on the synopsis.
But that's why I'm really interested, because now 100%. I'm like, that's an interesting thing for him to explore, and
I'm interested in his take. Yeah.
And I mean, like with a lot of filmmakers, like I said not long ago, filmmakers like him, I don't care what he does. Take my money, I'll be there day one.
For nerds like us, it's bums in seats. If
like,
we're so lucky enough to get seats to watch it in.
Like Jordan Peele's new movie comes out soon. I'm like, I don't care what it's about. I don't care what it's called. I'm just gonna go see it day one.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, Nolan's got a new movie? Psst, I don't care what it's called.
I'm really excited to see
IMAX, please.
I'm really excited to see him having actually dropped a nuke in the desert.
I was going to say, the fact that he's going to blow up a nuke, that's fine.
I think that's it.
Yeah. One thing we didn't talk
Netflix.
about is the Netflix thing.
The Netflix.
Netflix didn't want to make it because it was too much.
So I got a whole thing on this, but I didn't know if we were going to talk about it. Yeah. But Cronenberg, like I said, he's not like a lot of other directors. He kind of embraces the streaming. He embraces. He even says he's like, I don't even go to cinema anymore. I just watch stuff on my TV. Like he's not that kind of. He's not precious about filmmaking in the way a lot of other filmmakers are.
Also, COVID safe that way.
Yeah, exactly.
He's an old man. Got to be careful.
Yeah,
stay safe. Everybody.
And he knows if he knows about, if any filmmaker knows about viruses, it's the weird body horror guy. But so he embraces that, and he's taken projects to Netflix before, and I think this Crimes of the Future he probably took it as well.
They didn't want it.
He's mentioned Amazon once or twice, but he's talked about how. I got the quotes here because I found them interesting, and they relate to a lot of the stuff we talk about on the show, about how, how we used to talk about how Netflix is so great because they get all these filmmakers on who wouldn't otherwise be able to get their film seen, and they give them creative control, and they let them do whatever they want. And then all these horrible movies kept coming out.
I was saying, how much of that is an illusion?
Yeah.
Or that age like milk.
And then Netflix kind of, sort of started going downhill. And then we started to hear things of actually they don't give a lot of creative control, and they have a lot of rules and they have a lot of restrictions. And one of the reasons all their movies start to look and sound the same is because they have a lot of technical limitations. And then there's the algorithm thing of a lot of the reason a lot of their things look and sound the same is because they're looking for things deliberately to hit certain
Netflix started out the hero, but they became the villain.
Exactly.
I think we've talked about this before with Severance. There are other avenues now where you go if you want that creative experience.
Yeah, Netflix is quantity over quality, and Apple and HBO at the moment seem to be going more for the quality over quantity.
To a limited extent, I would also give Prime. They're sort of in the middle.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But I think...
I think it's just interesting because, while we do like streaming because, it's COVID safe and we can just see a movie and movies that would not otherwise get released. And even Cronenberg said, a movie can be watched 20, 30, 40 years from now just randomly, on TV. It's given it streaming has given it a different life than it would have had otherwise.
Yeah.
But he has talked about how he's gone to Netflix and they're like, we really want to make stuff with you, but not that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I should read the whole quotes because they're quite long, but I'll kind of paraphrase. He said they're bright. Netflix is bright, literate. They know their stuff, but they're underneath. They're afraid.
weirdly conservative in a way.
Exactly. That's what he says. And he says they say we want to work with you, but not on this.
Yeah.
And then he says, he talked about Netflix. He talked to Netflix and Amazon about Crimes of the Future, and it was not a project they wanted to do. But
they'll do The Boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
but even that, like, remember in the first season they wouldn't let Homelander jerk off, and then they put that scene in the second season when it became popular, and now it's the third season. Then they're letting him do whatever they want, and it's gone crazy. That's the thing, is if you're their money maker, then they let you do it.
Yeah.
But he said that that they're very conservative, and they still think in mainstream terms. And they still think like an old studio does. He said that the streaming services, the experiences he's had meeting with streaming services are the same he's had with meeting old school studios. Yeah. He says it's the same thing. It's just they want, they
want the same things.
They want the same things. So even though they give the air of like, we're hip, we're punk.
Yeah, it's the same. It's a different wig on the same people. Yeah.
And I think now now you've got the algorithms, which is a whole other aspect that didn't really exist before 10, I guess it was 15 years ago.
Test audiences before. Now it's the algorithm.
And now it's the algorithm. So like things just get chosen by a robot basically.
But it's also what's trending on, we'll say, growth markets too.
Yeah.
Which also complicates matters.
Yeah, that's why they got like Korean shows.
Yeah, the more you try to grow, and the more you're focusing on trend growth areas, you're limiting what you're making to a very small part of your market. So more is going to fail.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean...
What a crazy world, though, to think that anybody would reject Cronenberg. Maybe it's because I'm a nerd and I'm like, I love the man.
It is because, like, we're film nerds, so of course we would say, Scorsese, Cronenberg, here's $1 bajillion, do whatever you want. Yeah. And we don't care about return on investment because we're nerds, and in reality we don't have money, and so this is all theoretical. But these are businesses, they're made to make money. And so on the one hand, I understand it, but also I'm like...
The man's earned his opportunity.
Also, the amount of money you're going to be spending on it is a drop in the ocean compared to the money you're spending on that garbage.
Do you know what the budget was for this film?
I don't know, but it would have been quite low.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to see what the budget was for this film and what the budget was for the finale of Stranger Things.
That's interesting, yeah.
See,
it's also how you use the budget. This movie, Crimes of the Future, is clearly low budget, but it has a style. The practical effects are really cool. The interesting use of the location that they used basically for budgetary reasons. Whereas something like Stranger Things is $1 bajillion budget, looks pretty crappy. Let's be honest.
That's what I mean. I'm like he could do so much with so much less,
But that's the thing, is like he doesn't necessarily need more.
And he's a big brand name. He's not a big brand name.
We talked about Scanners when you watched it a few weeks ago, and it's like, Scanners would have been great with a bigger budget, but it's pretty awesome, and there's a reason people like it, and there's a reason, it has its own kind of feeling and following.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, any movie... We always talk about any movie could use a few more bucks here and there, a couple extra weeks here or there. But at a certain point, you just got to...
It's not easy to find the budget. I don't think they've released how much it cost.
I would say
under
10 million easy.
Yeah. The intended
probably
budget...
under 5.
Probably. The intent... They partnered with local Greek production companies to make the movie as well. And it was paid for by Greece.
Yeah.
But the intended production budget for this movie, when it was going to be shot in Toronto, was 35 mil.
So less than that. So probably I would say 10 mil.
I'd say less than 10 mil.
Probably even less.
Yeah.
So easy. Like, it's a drop in the bucket.
I mean, so less than 10 mil. And how much did the new Grey Man movie cost? Like 100 million?
Yeah, and that looked like garbage. I didn't even want to watch it. Like, that's the thing, is it's like...
but that could have made 10 Cronenberg.
Yeah, but, can you imagine that?
Yeah.
But 10 Cronenberg movies for the price of one Grey Man. So it seems like a bargain.
This is what happened when Avatar came out. Avatar and District 9 came out in the same year. Avatar cost like $250-300 million. District 9 cost 10 million.
Something like
20
that. Well, it
million?
wasn't a lot.
It was between 10 and 30 million.
Yeah.
District 9.
Yeah.
Something was not that. I'm like, you could make so many District 9s for one Avatar.
Yeah.
Avatar is a garbage CGI garbage movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
District 9 is one of the best sci-fi movies of the 21st century.
Yeah.
It's all about how you use the budget, the filmmaking.
And it can still be done. You know, we have problems with some of their movies, but Blumhouse is the perfect example, right? A24, all these small to mid-budget.
Yeah,
they know how to work. They know how to work with the budget.
That's it.
Yeah,
you can still do it.
A24, like,
take some risks.
Yeah,
I'm surprised Blumhouse wasn't like, yeah, Cronenberg, here, take some money.
It's not in their wheelhouse. So even though they're. Yeah, see, they're more just straightforward
horror.
Like they did the Black Phone.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they would never do Men. A24 did Men. You know.
Yeah.
So well, we wanted somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. I wish I was Jeff Bezos. I would just give like artists money instead of making a crappy Lord of the Rings show that we're not going to like.
Instead of making a penis-shaped rocket, because you want to go into space.
Yeah, and not paying your workers.
I was talking about this at work with someone. I'm like, what is it with these billionaires? You get to a certain level of billionaire, and you two different. Like, to get to that level of wealth, you have to compromise principles. You have to be
a bad person.
You have to be a bad person. Because that level of wealth is built on the backs of other people who are getting underpaid or underutilized. Yeah. What is it when you get to that amount of money and you're just like, I want to go to space now? It's like, no.
You know what it is? It's because you already already have
because there are no rules when you're at that.
Yeah, you have so much influence over the earthly domains. It's like, it's boring. Why go to Paris? It's boring. You've been to Paris.
It's the thing with Crimes of the Future of like, well, they can't feel pain anymore, so you might as well start cutting into people. You need something
to give you a thrill, which is going out.
It's just like, once you have one hit of heroin, the next one has to be stronger. A higher dose until you can't get a high off it anymore. Like, you have to keep upping it. It's the same, like, if you're a super rich guy who can get whatever he wants whenever he wants, at a certain point you don't get high off that anymore.
You have to go into space to get that thrill.
Yeah.
Is this how the Fantastic Four starts in real life?
That would be interesting, you know, because Reed Richards famously is kind of a dickish character. So they could definitely make, but then I guess Iron Man's already that kind of playboy, is a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're so far off topic, but this leads me to an interesting point, which we'll end on here. We want the show to be more like this: casual conversation, not constantly worrying about
the clock,
what time it is. Yeah. And unfortunately, we have to record in the studio where we do have some time constraints and we do have other people to be considerate of. But yeah, we're going to try next week. We're going to try a slightly different format where it's a bit more relaxed. It's a bit more like this, where if the topic starts to go into Jeff Bezos or whatever,
find its own way back.
Yeah, and you just find your way back, and you know, we'll talk about movies and we'll talk about all that stuff. But it's just more relaxed and more fun for us.
We always find that our conversations are much funnier, they're much better, much more thought-provoking off air than on air.
We've been talking about
it's lightning in a bottle outside the studio.
Yeah, we've been talking about it since the old show, since the Man vs. Movies days. We'd turn off the mics and then we'd have the best jokes, the best pop culture discussions. We'd have this, and then we were like, why can't we replicate that?
It's funny, and before the show, I started saying something. James was like, no, save it.
Save it for next week.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is it's like we keep trying to replicate it and we kept trying to change the format over the years and it's never really worked. And this time we're going to try again and we hope it works out this time. Because we've been doing the show for so long and it's just like, we need to keep it.
We weren't particularly happy with last week's episode. So we're like, you know what? We have, the off-air hour as well.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are we rushing? We can breathe. Yeah. We can take a second.
It's because we kept going into lockdown and things kept changing. Yeah. And anyway, we'll talk about this more next week when we do introduce the new format, which is not going to be completely out there. It's just going to be more like this.
More relaxed, yeah. But
less rush.
I think we did better this week than last week.
I think so. But then on the other hand, you could say that now we're just rambling and we're stretching it out too much.
I don't think that.
I just worry. It's just, I'm just a warrior.
No, Joe Rogan is one of the most popular podcasts out there, right?
And he waffles on for hours.
And he waffles on for 4 hours talking about the same, like, random shit.
Look, honestly, if we did have our own studio, we would have much longer podcasts.
Oh, yeah. we would. But, at least we're on a topic.
I think we're all right. I think it worked because we talked about everything we wanted to talk about each of the movies.
Yeah.
We had our tangents. We didn't force the tangents to end.
Yeah.
We conversationally handled it.
And we got time left over.
Yeah. So it was fine.
Yeah. So tune in if there are people still listening. Tune in next week, and we're gonna sort of introduce this more relaxed format from now on, and see how that goes for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. All right, everyone. You can listen on Anchor, Shout Engine, Spotify.
No, not Shout Engine.
Not Shout Engine.
No.
A pox on Shout Engine. You can listen on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your
on your podcasting
apps.
Rate, review, and subscribe. Review. If you want.
Are there any movies you want?
Let us know. Let us know if we can't see the forest from the trees with Men.
Yeah, if you liked Men, let us know.
Let us know if we're mansplaining to you.
Our Mensplained review.
Mensplained.
Everyone. Thanks for listening, everybody. Adios, cousins.